Bam, we're live. Another deep dive. This time with JR Howell, round 2. I think it's been like a month since I had you on. Thanks for coming on, JR.
No, you're welcome.
We are talking all things upper pulling in CrossFit today. So week 2 of movement series. Last week talked about squatting with Bryson, and today upper pulling with JR. Why JR? Well, here's my timeline of knowledge about you and upper pulling, JR. One, I knew you had a self-proclaimed programming bias toward upper pulling.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's all it was. And then a few months ago, Angelo on a show mentioned how good you are at upper pulling. I was like, oh, it's not just a bias. He's a really strong upper puller. And then I saw your birthday workout, which was a 40-minute EMOM, and every minute had a legless rope climb. Is that correct?
Yeah.
With interference. There was like handstand push-up stuff or sled push maybe, something like that. And then the Kill Taylor workouts, legless rope climbs. I can't remember if it was 50 for time or a 7-minute AMRAP.
Yeah, it was the AMRAP. And then way back when, like, I don't even think it was called Kill Taylor back then, but me and Taylor did 100 pegboard for time at Charlotte.
Yeah, right. I remember that.
Yeah,
on Instagram live.
Mm-hmm.
And Kill Taylor pegboard workout. Did I already say that? But anyway, so all these things started pulling up about like you're a really great upper body puller. So I just thought it was a programming bias, but you yourself, you really like upper body pulling.
Yeah, I think like a good place to start on this whole conversation is, well, you could probably back up and tell an embarrassing story. So you're probably too young to remember this, but maybe some people watching. Did you ever take the presidential fitness test?
I did.
Okay, so I was a tall, chubby kid, not short. Like I was always the tallest kid in my class. My dad is 6'7", my mom is 5'2". And my whole life up until I was like 13, I was always the tallest kid. So when I was 13, I was the same height as I am now. So I was like 6 feet at 13. I just stopped growing. So I was always the chubby tall kid who was like pretty fast, but just kind of chunky and really not mobile. Like the sit and reach, I would fail. And then the pull-up test, I could not do a pull-up. So all the way up until I was probably 16, 17 years old, I couldn't do a pull-up at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when I got to the point where I lost a lot of weight, I went to college even though I didn't need to, like you don't need to work like strict upper body pulling in basketball, but whenever I would have time in the gym, I would just do strict pull-ups because I was never able to as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of spilled over into CrossFit. Of course, I learned how to like do the sexier stuff. Like I learned how to butterfly too early. I learned how to kit probably too early. And I tried to do muscle ups when my shoulders weren't really able to take all that wear and tear, and made all those mistakes. And I realized though early on when I got into programming that by the nature of the sport, there's a ton of upper body pushing. So there's 3 different planes of upper body push. You do burpees all the time. You do push-ups. Then you do dip variations on the rings and on the bars. Then you do overhead press variations. Then you do hand balancing stuff. Handstand walk, P-bar, handstand hold, static, whatever. So by nature, and then think about all the loaded pressing you have, right? You have bench press, and then you have like dumbbell shoulder overhead, barbell shoulder overhead, kettlebell shoulder overhead, all that stuff. So you have so many press variations, but you have pull-ups, chest to bar, bar muscle up, ring muscle up, which is a push and a pull, but still a pull. Mm-hmm. And then you have rope climb. And that's kind of where it ends. Like you still have some hanging movements. I guess you could still put like toes to bar in there if you want. If you program knees to elbows, you'll get a little bit more bicep and lat activation because most people cannot touch their knee to their elbow with straight arms. Some people can. But just in general, unless you invest in a bunch of pulling ropes and do hand over hand sled pull, unless you do supine ring rows, like there's just not nearly as many pulling movements as there are available pressing movements. So early on, I had a lot of shoulder wear and tear, and I know it was just because I was pressing so much and not pulling enough to pull my shoulder blades back and actually balance. So like my rear delts, my upper back, my lats were getting a ton of work, but those other smaller musculature of the rear shoulder and the upper back weren't getting a lot. And, you know, people like, you see people doing face pulls with bands, or like face pulls, like Marcus Philly would do that thing where he would have the straps and he would scoot back on his butt and pull, and then scoot back and pull. Like, there's some stuff like that you can do, but it doesn't really work in a per time or AMRAP setting. And so early on, I was like, man, if I want my shoulders to feel good, I need to do as much pulling as I am pushing. And so there was a lot of days where I would just go in and be like, hey, I'm just going to do 100 ring rows, just 10 sets of 10. And then the next day I would go in and be like, okay, I pulled in that plane. I'll do strict pull-ups today. Maybe I'll do ring pull-ups. Maybe I'll do pull-ups on the pegboard, so I still get that kind of neutral grip pull. Maybe I'll do rope climb, like legless rope climb. So I think at that point too, I was like, hey, I need to be strict pulling because those muscles are really weak and I'm getting really rolled forward. So I think for me in the beginning, it was more like injury prevention and like rehab type stuff. And then when I got into the sport more and more, I was like, man, a lot, like most people are decent pressers, body weight pressers, external load pressers. But this pulling, this strict pulling, or even dynamic pulling really exposes people. So whenever I program a competition, I like to make sure that there's some form of pull that's going to check that box. And like the syndicate programming that came out yesterday, like that cut rope climb, which, you know, it's been since 2017. And there are ways, like if you go back and watch Brent and Katrin, there are ways that you can kind of maybe figure out how to not use as much biceps and do that legless pull. But that's still, with that movement combination, like grip and pulling has to be tested, I think, over anything else, because generally, unless it's someone's specific weakness on like a strict parallel deficit handstand push-up, most people, let's go heavy shoulder to overhead. That's probably going to show you the same thing as an overhead lunge. It's probably going to show you the same thing as a strict handstand push-up. That's probably going to show you the same thing of a weakness in a handstand walk. Generally, there's a lot of ways you can test pressing and you can kind of check that box. But I think with pulling, you have to be very specific.
So you brought up the lack of variation in pressing options we have. I'll say pulling variations we have in CrossFit, kind of in the general CrossFit movement library. And that was something I wanted to ask you about, which is horizontal pulling. The only true horizontal pull that I could think of in CrossFit was a ring row. And then the other things were either compromised in terms of their resistance profile, meaning you could make an argument that a chest to bar is a horizontal pull, but you're essentially weightless at that time. It's not like you're actually pulling your body weight horizontally. You're displacing it horizontally while you're like floating in the air, right? So that's different. Horizontal displacement stuff like sandbags lights up the back and the rhomboids and all that's good stuff. But it's the lengthened position. You're stuck in the lengthened position and you're crushing it back toward yourself. Same thing I think could be said of like a deadlift, or if you're thinking like almost equivalent to, or like the opposite of a dip, a deadlift or an upright row. The closest we get to that is like Olympic weightlifting. But again, it's like essentially like a kipping movement. And so we have no strict, like this kind of vertical pull, like an upright row.
Yeah, some of the other high pull is the only thing, but that's very dynamic, right? That's supposed to be taught points performance wise, where the upper body's not doing a lot. It's more the grip that's getting taxed, but it's just the hips and legs that are doing the work, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Chris Biesterfield mentioning this, dumbbell bench rows. Did you hear Greg mention that on a show with Sevon? He was like, have you ever thought about adding a movement to the movement library, pretty much? And he's like, I had thought about the row, single arm, and you get a bunch of rotation in there.
Yeah, because he said something that was really, really profound. He said, imagine your friend is falling off a cliff, essentially, and you have to reach down across your body, maybe grab their hand and pull them back up. Like that, starting a lawnmower or whatever, that movement pattern is more seen in nature and in real life than a lot of other isolation bodybuilding type movements. And I heard him say, like, I really think there's a lot of utility in the bent over row, which I thought was great, because we'll go through periods with the affiliate programming where on like Tuesdays usually is a good day. Like right now we're doing Murph prep, so it doesn't work with pushing and pulling on Mondays, but Tuesdays we'll do like some push pull. So we might do like dumbbell bench press, hand over hand sled pull with a rope. And then the next week we might do seated kettlebell press with strict pull-ups. The next week we might do dumbbell bent over row and strict handstand push-up. But just that that antagonistic approach of push-pull, specifically though making sure that we're doing some loaded pulling. Because unless you're doing a weighted pull-up, think about how many loaded presses you can do. And unless you're adding weight to your body, the only thing that you can really do is bent over row. You can do pin lay row. You can do traditional bent over row with a barbell or a dumbbell, and that's kind of it. I mean, who has 10 pads that they can do a seal row on? You know, no one has. So it's yeah, I thought it was really cool. I listened to that show when he said the bent over row, and I think I've heard Adrian talk about it a lot too. That in his training, like with the circus or gymnastics or whatever, they needed to make sure that when you're doing a lot of static work and stuff, that you hit the back a little bit more. And that's one of the few movements you can do that like will carry over. So that was cool.
So how do you make sense of that lack of pulling variation in CrossFit? Is it just something where like, yeah, you might want to do some bonus work? Again, thinking about like getting into the shortened position, like being at peak contraction, pulling something toward yourself, not just hanging or like bearing load like in a deadlift or a sandbag carry. Do you just have to do some accessory stuff to do some horizontal pulling and get a full range of motion?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, obviously, I have invested a lot in the gym equipment. So we have 12, 80-foot ropes to do hand over hand sled work. And I try to get those in at least once a month in a workout or in some kind of accessory type stuff. I program rope climbs every week, and a lot of times it's legless. And even when it's not legless programmed, I will tell people, hey, the rep scheme is 15, 10, 5 for this partner workout, right? So there's 30 total rope climbs, 15 a piece if you split them up evenly. Some of you guys might want to go 9, 6, 3 and do legless. You get 9 in. Strict pulling is one of those things, like you have to do it to get better at it. You have to. There isn't, in my opinion, a lot of second wave adaptation from doing other things and getting better at something else when it comes to strict pulling. Like doing dynamic pulling is not going to get you better at strict pulling. However, lots of strict pulling will inevitably, I think, make your dynamic pulling easier.
Do you think that has more to do with endurance? Like, are you picturing somebody with a really heavy deadlift and they gas out after 20 strict pull-ups or something?
No, I'm thinking about it as a strength issue.
Okay.
So if we're doing, let's say we're doing a workout, and the workout is 200-meter run, 1 legless rope climb, 10 rounds for time. So you're essentially doing a legless rope climb with a minute of rest in between. So you still have heart rate, but there really isn't any upper body interference at all. Anyone that wants to say there is, you're reaching. Like, well, my arms are like this one. No, there's not. So let's just say that after 7 or 8 rounds, you can't get up the rope anymore. If the workout was ski, if the workout was double unders, if the workout was kettlebell swing, we can talk about some grip interference. And well, it's really my grip. It's not my pulling strength. In this scenario, no, you cannot get up the rope anymore because you are no longer strong enough to get up the rope. So to me, that is not a capacity issue. Sure. Well, my first 5 reps are really easy, but then after that, okay, yeah, there's probably some stamina involved there. But in general, something like a legless rope climb, you cannot get up the rope because you're not strong enough to get up the rope. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's a strength limitation. And when me and Taylor get on, and we do disagree on stuff, and that's why I love to talk programming stuff with him and Bryson. But something we really agree on is when you look at programming at gyms, you look at programming at competitions, you always want to look at the strength of it. Well, where's the lift? Why can't it be, okay, where's the strength event? Where's the strict upper body press or pull? We never look at that because that is strength. A deficit strict handstand push-up is not, well, that's gymnastics. It's gymnastics, but it's a strength limitation. It is no different than if we did dumbbell bench press. You just can't lift the weight anymore because you're not strong enough. It doesn't have anything to do with you being out of breath or any of that kind of stuff. So I think that not doing it enough is probably the biggest limitation. And I know I'm jumping around a lot. I listened to Dave Durante not too long ago. I want to say it was on a Power Monkey podcast. And he said something so cool. He's like, in gymnastics, you always train the hardest form of the movement. So if you're doing strict pull-ups, you would never do a chin over the bar pull-up if you can pull to your chest. You would never do a strict chest to bar if you can do a strict belly to bar. You would never do a strict belly to bar if you can do a strict bar muscle up. So you're always training toward the hardest form of the movement because inevitably that makes everything underneath it easier. So if you only do strict chest to bars, whenever you do strict pull-ups, you get that, like you're saying, that longer contraction, right? Versus stopping here. Similarly, like if you did strict handstand push-ups and you only went to the floor, or if you did them at a deficit all the time, you're getting that deeper range of motion. When you go to do the lesser form, it will be easier for you. Now, if you're doing 100 in the workout and you're like, well, I mean, 100 is just a different story, right? Because you're tapping into some other like smaller musculature endurance or whatever. Well, now it's my triceps, not my shoulders. Okay, we can talk about that. But just in general, I think that idea of training the harder form of the movement instead of just training the minimum is something that not a lot of people do. There are a lot of times, like I said, if rope climbs are programmed, but I know there's certain athletes that have that skill pattern dialed in and they're not going to be limited by anything muscular. It's just going to be how fast can I get up and down the rope or whatever. But hey, why don't you do legless for the first round? I know you're wanting to get better at legless. Like, why don't you do legless in the first round? Or if the workout is programmed as chest to bar, just be like, hey, I know you're telling me that like your shoulders are kind of achy from the snatches we did the other day. Why don't you just do strict pull-ups instead? Go chin over the bar, just do the same rep scheme. Will the stimulus be exactly the same? No. But inevitably doing more of the strict pulling, it builds up that musculature, prevents injury, and it carries over to when they do chest to bar. It's like, man, I feel like I can stay on the bar longer. I feel like when you're doing a lot of the dynamic stuff, once you dial in the neurological component of the coordination and the skill, like at that point, I think it's a really good idea not to overdo it because of all the shearing and all like those slat tears and stuff. And say, hey man, you do butterfly chest to bar every other week, maybe just keep it tight. But otherwise, like do strict pull or do a more complex upper body pull. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things people can do. In general, though, I think there might be a reluctancy to program it because it is hard, and you do get that response of like, I just can't do it anymore. Okay, well, if we did 225 clean and jerks, you wouldn't even be trying to do it. You just say, well, can't do that. I got to do 185. What's the difference? It's people just don't think about it the same way. They have this idea that a lot of times doing a lesser form of or scaling a body weight movement is like more of a embarrassment than scaling a really heavy external load movement. For some reason, I see that being a mindset that people have.
Right. Tuna Lulu. What is that? What is that platform? Is that Rumble or Twitch? Is that Twitch? We're talking about upper body pulling. What are you guys talking about? We're talking about upper body pulling in CrossFit.
Nerd stuff.
What's your like test? A standard you have? What's the litmus test, I guess, for if somebody is really good at upper body pulling in
a benchmark?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like 10 legless rope climbs per time to a true 15 feet is a good one. And I would say like 10 for guys, 7 or 8 for women. I'd say if you do that under 2 minutes, you're in a pretty good place.
Say that one more time.
10, or for most, I don't know, it's tough for women. Let's say 7. 7 for women, 10 for men, 15 feet for time, legless rope climbs. And if you do that in under 2 minutes, I think you're in a pretty good place.
Okay. Why legless rope climb and not strict pull up? Would there be another one? Ring muscle up, maybe, but that's not really limited by pull.
Not for most people. Yeah. I mean, unless it's in a grip intensive workout, it's usually limited by getting out of the dip, typically.
Right.
I think there are very few people that would say that they can always get out of the dip. It's just getting over the rings. I just think that one versus a strict pull up, you can't fake it as much. Like, yes, there are ways you can kip legless rope climb for sure. But I think on a strict pull up, it can get a little bit dicey with like maybe masking the fact that you're weaker by using your hips and kind of gaming the movement a little bit more. I also think there's something to that one arm contraction versus that 2-arm contraction where you can recruit some other musculature when you're doing a strict pull up that you can't do when you're just trying to climb a rope. But yeah, that off the top of my head, that's a good one. Another thing that me and Angela were actually talking about this the other day, and this is probably a whole nother podcast on a deep dive, but why does it seem like for males, typically the athletes that are the best upper body pullers, or a lot of them, also have very, very good overhead position, but for females, it tends to be the opposite. So
Justin Medeiros.
So Justin, really good upper body puller, beautiful overhead position. Rich, great upper body puller, amazing overhead position. Okay, but then on the female side, think about Katrin, how amazing she was overhead, very stacked, right? Whenever there was anything like that, she was awesome, but always had a limitation for strict upper body pulling. Alex Gazan, amazing upper body puller, probably the best in CrossFit, I would say right now.
Yep.
Like overhead position, not amazing.
Right.
So why for the men does it seem, and this is a generalization, of course, it was just an interesting conversation. He was like, why do you think it's the opposite? Like usually you have one or you have the other. And that's how I think of it. Like, yes, I'm a good upper body puller. My overhead position is miserable. Like I'm just terrible overhead. But most guys that I know, if they're really, really elite at one, they're pretty good at the other. Right. So I don't know. That's another deep dive type conversation to maybe figure out why that is.
Right.
But I think in general, the have or the have nots on the female side, when it comes to strict upper body pulling in competition, really, really, really can hurt athletes versus the men. Like I think men can hide it a little bit more, but on the women's side, you either have the people that are incredible, Emma Tall, Alex Gazan at upper body pulling, or you have the people that are just like, oh, before the event starts, they're probably taking a bottom 5 on this. Like it's just a crazy discrepancy.
Heidi Kroom, aren't you the host? Yes, I am the host. I'm Brad Assaraf, host of the Deep Dive Show. Welcome. I missed you last week, Heidi. Tuna Lulu again. I can't do a single pull-up. IDK, how to do it. Head over to trainsentinel.com and find their strict pull-up program. And you can buy that, and probably in like 2 months max, you'd probably have a pull-up. Depends where you're at. But how would one go about getting better at upper body pulling? And I'm going to mix that with, you mentioned that doing the hardest variation of an upper body pulling movement. Have you ever done a challenge like that where you're like, hey, for the next 6 months, anytime I see a pull up in a workout, I'm going to do it strict and I'm going to do it to the fullest range of motion that I can?
No, I have not done that. When I was doing 100 burpees a day for a year last year with Peter, I knew that could be very harmful to my shoulders just because of the constant press off the floor every day. So at least like 3 or 4 days a week, I would do 50 of some kind of strict pull just to try to balance it out. I think that people that just want to get better at it, there are 3 things you should do. 3 days a week, I think you should pull in a strict form. So that doesn't count dynamic pulling. I think that you need to try to vary the pull in 3 different planes if you can. So some form of strict pull up would be great. Use a band if you need to. Do negatives, whatever, right? So something on a pull-up bar. And then I think doing something horizontal in that true supine position, right? And supine, for people that don't know, is on your back, all right? So that something in that position, whether it's bar rows, like put a barbell on a rack, put your feet up on a box, inverted row basically, or you do it with rings, that's fine too, but it needs to be full range of motion. And then the other one I think needs to be some sort of load. So if you can do a hand over hand sled, great. Most people probably don't have access. So what we talked about, barbell row, bent over row. And I think accumulating at least 50 reps, 100 is probably better, but starting out, that might not be, that might just make you super sore. 50 reps 3 times a week would be great. And for a lot of people, I think it would be smart to try to do that on days that either you're already pulling. So like, I'm already going to do a bunch of toes to bar today. Okay. So when I get done, I'm going to do my strict pulling. Or you pick a day that you're doing an antagonistic movement. So, hey, we're doing a ton of dips today. Okay. I'm going to do my ring rows today then. So just so that you get that balance, I think would be a good idea. And not doing more than 1 day in a row is probably smart.
So what were the 1, 2, 3? 3 times a week is number 1. Pull 3 times a week.
At least 50 reps a week. 50 reps a session. And I think one needs to be a loaded pull, so some sort of row variation, or like a hand over hand sled. One needs to be an actual pull up on a pull up bar, strict. So using bands or maybe even doing negatives. And then the other one, some kind of horizontal body weight row, whether that's a P-bar inverted row, ring row, or barbell inverted row.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's good. I think variation is always the best. If there are people that are trying to get their first pull up and they come in one day and they're like, well, I did ring rows on Monday when we did muscle ups. So we're doing chest to bar today. What do you think I should do? I'm like, do what you didn't do Monday. Like, change it up. Yeah, do something different.
Heidi, can you please post a cheat sheet on this, Brad? Yes, I will post this in the description. Wanna love high pulls. So we got the true horizontal, we got vertical. Any need to do this? I would still consider it vertical, but there's probably a better word for it. Some sort of upright row.
Yeah, I think it's okay, but to me, an upright row is probably going to hit a little bit more of the muscles of the rotator cuff, and the delts and the traps is a little bit more. I mean, I think that's still probably hits the posterior shoulder in a way. I mean, it'll carry over a lot to weightlifting as far as snatch and clean and jerks. That's kind of what we do when we do that movement. But for this specifically, like if it's 4 pull-ups and 4 strict upper body pulling, I probably wouldn't do that in there.
What about transverse push pull?
Sure.
From the horse's mouth. Any last words on upper pulling?
No, just if you do it, you'll get better at it. It's one of those simple things, but you have to be pretty diligent about doing it every week. And
most people could just do with more strict gymnastics and strict upper pulling. Holy moly.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing, and I'll probably get some pushback on this, but as I've gotten older and more of a curmudgeon, I tend to be more honest with people. There's 2 ways you can get better at your upper body pulling gymnastics. One of them is to get stronger. The other one is to lose 5 pounds, and it's a lot easier to lose 5 pounds than it is to get stronger. So I'll just leave it at that. So nutrition is probably the best place to start.
You're absolutely right. That I mean, that's the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Wow. Not Sentinel. Syndicate workouts are out. They look sick. Well, I'm gonna leave it to another show. Somebody else, I'm sure, is gonna quiz you about them. But what was the last finalized workout? Like the last workout that you had to tinker with before getting everything cemented and ready?
The finale. I thought for sure everyone was going to do ring muscle ups in all the in-person qualifying events, and no one was going to do bar muscle up. So that workout was 9, 15 bar muscle up, 21, 15 bar muscle up, 9. And I always program ring in competition, always. So I was like, it's going to be great. It's going to be bar. It's going to be different. Mayhem programming comes out, 30, 30, 30. So everyone's doing 30, 30, 30, it feels like. And even the ones that aren't partnered with Mayhem are still programming bar muscle up. And I'm like, you know what? We got to get ring in there, right? In affiliate semi did a bunch of ring. Like a lot of people did like 63 or more muscle ups. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? We got a team event that has synchro bar and ring muscle up. Let's put both. Let's put both in the same workout. So we went 9, 15 or 12 ring, 21, 15 or 12 bar coming back down, and then 9. So that was made maybe 2 weeks ago. It was a very like kind of emotional last minute thing where I was like, you know, let's go outside the box a little bit and let's put them both in the same workout. I've never done that before. So I think it'll still preserve the intensity of of that particular event, and it won't take anything away from what it's supposed to be about. And that's the back 9, the bag 9 with the back 9.
You and Boz are the two only people that I think you guys actually name workouts well. I don't want to. The Mayhem workout names piss me off. Like the Mayhem programming workout names that are just random. It's like barbecue sandwich. And I'm never on board with that. But you and Boz got it dialed in. It's great.
No, he's like, as far as the puns go and stuff, like bike to work, shuttle to overhead. Like he's good. He's really clever when it comes to naming them, for sure.
Amazing. Well, Syndicate Crown, 2.5 weeks away. JR's programming. Sevon team is running the live stream. It's going to be wild. JR, thanks for coming on. All your upper pulling questions answered. I'll post his cheat sheet about how to get better at upper pulling in the description. See you guys next week.